From NPR News, this is All Things Considered.
David Bazan was once known as the first crossover Christian indie rock musician. His band, Pedro the Lion, sold hundreds of thousands of records. Then Bazan began questioning the God he sang about, alienating many of his fans.
It was a dissonance that my mind just couldn't deal with.
I killed it, and along with it, I killed my career, just driving around playing solo shows, trying to think through it.
That's the myth of a powerful movement like American Evangelical Christianity. The interpretation that seems universal is the real thing. So in the end, I realized that I was challenging nothing more than an institution.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Soundworks Collection podcast series. This week we have a special conversation that was recorded a few months ago with two of my friends, Director Brandon Vedder and re-recording mixer Tony Villaflor. The film is now available to watch on iTunes, Amazon, YouTube, Google Play, and Microsoft Store, and you can find out more at strangenegotiationsfilm.com. And I'd love for you, Brandon, just to share what was it about this story and what really captured your interest. Why did you want to tell it?
Yeah, that's a good question because it's, music is where I started shooting music, shooting live music, playing live music. Music was the first kind of artistic language that I understood and understood how to communicate through. And then faith, faith and these big questions, the questions of the existential nature, and just kind of wonder, wondering. I've always had a posture of wondering since I was a kid, and been interested in faith and the power, this very uniquely human thing that has this power to start wars or, make people sacrifice themselves for each other. Beautiful and horrible things are all done in faith, And so these two things that I've always been so interested in, I kind of found coming together and being talked about in such an interesting way by this musician, David Bazan, who we connected on early in the process. Tony's a big fan as well. And so, the way that David Bazan, who's the musician, who grew up as an evangelical Christian and kind of made music within that world, within that culture, and became very popular, was kind of like the biggest Christian indie rock band, not like labeled Christian, but was in that world. And as he got older and as he continued making art, he was pushing into this faith system in a way that eventually led him to being on the outside of it, pulling on the strings in a way that it stopped making sense for him. And it's a story that we see a lot, but what we don't see a lot is this kind of ability, the process of it, and it being done by someone that is incredibly gifted when it comes to communication. It's like, and that's the way that I've always looked at the film, is Dave is our kind of everyman. He's the guy that can say, feel, create the things that most of us feel, but could never express. And so, it's a film that follows him after he's lost his faith, which happened kind of publicly, and he lost most of his fan base and his ability to play to large audiences. He lost his band, and we kind of follow him through this desert kind of journey. And we, through art, faith, politics, kind of through the lens of this guy.
Okay. So for you, Tony, when Brandon first reached out to you, what were your thoughts? Because a documentary film is not typically what you're working on.
I actually reached out to him.
Oh, okay. So then, that's a different scenario in that case. So how did you hear about the project, and then why did you reach out to Brandon about the film?
Well, I was a fan of Dave's music for a long time.
Yeah.
Grew up listening to a lot of Pedro the Lion, stuff like that, and then his solo stuff. And I've seen him live a ton of times.
Okay.
Been to a bunch of house shows and stuff like that. And I'm on the mailing list. And I think it came through on a mailing list thing, like that there's this doc coming out. So I figured,
why not?
I don't know how I got in touch with you, like on the Kickstarter or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I figured it'd be cool to work on. It'd be kind of a passion project kind of thing, and a little bit of a departure from what I normally work on, but it'd be fun to do. You know what I mean? And, yeah.
So how early on did you reach out to Brandon then? When was that?
I don't know at what point you were in. If you were editing it, I think.
I think
The first time he was editing as he shot it.
yeah. No, I definitely hadn't finished
Right.
shooting.
Oh, shooting. Okay.
I think I maybe had just started editing. Yeah, because I had to have started editing to do the little Kickstarter piece. But so it was the very beginning. Still had no idea how much longer we'd be shooting. So yeah, so we started these conversations very, very early in terms of kind of, the sonic landscape type stuff.
Okay.
Which I think was kind of cool and helped that we started talking about like sound and stuff like that so early in the process. So when you were cutting it and editing it and putting it together like that, you could keep the sound and how that would, go through as a thread
Totally.
in mind and stuff like that,
Totally. Yeah, Tony had me up to Skywalker maybe just a couple weeks after you first reached out, and we had lunch, and we're able to talk through a lot of this stuff in a way that, it was like we were able to begin this collaboration, and your ideas and my ideas were able to start kind of coming together, like you're saying, in a way that actually affected what I continued to capture and the direction of kind of, the film was going. So it was fun. And I actually remember you talking about that at that lunch, like, this is crazy. Like, I've never gotten to be, like involved in something this early.
And you said like sound was going to play a huge part in it, which it did. Of course, it's a music related thing, but it was done in an interesting way where like it was super introspective and stuff like that. And it wasn't like a just informational kind of documentary where you have dialogue and there's music there to kind of support that and stuff like that. Like, there's more of a narrative with the sound and stuff like that. So it was cool to be able to talk about that stuff really early on. Talk about like trying to get inside Dave's head and trying to transition to these different pieces and stuff like that. So it was helpful to have those conversations really early on in the process and stuff.
So do you guys think that those early conversations, like, how did that influence your direction how you're shooting or how you're thinking about the sequences?
Yeah, I mean, I think it helped me understand what was possible, and yeah, just that I would have, I was able to kind of have a tone in my head and a certain sound palette in my head while we were shooting, where it's like I would understand how this would translate through the edit to, sitting at the board with Tony kind of thing, and what we would do in terms of sound effects and stuff. So it was cool because it gave me the tools I needed to kind of take it all the way through. And, it allowed me to get kind of weird in different spots too, because having the confidence of having Tony on the team, it was just like, okay, I know that we can achieve these things. It's not just, chasing after the wind.
So Tony, for you, so like when you think about spotting or even just understanding what a documentary could be, and like what can you do in those early stages? Like, can you really have that much do that much work? Like, you have to wait till like, pictures lock, or like when?
I mean, not quite locked. Yeah. But it was just helpful having conversations about things really early on. You know what I mean? Because I didn't see anything for a while, I don't think. But just listening to you talk about what you wanted it to be, and how you wanted it to be different, and how you wanted sound to play a part in how different it was. Like, you didn't want it to sound like your classic documentary. You wanted to be something a little different than that.
Do you think like from that suggestion at the very beginning to kind of like now where we're at, does that like, how does that feel? Does it feel like that's what you kind of expected we would be doing, or was it completely different, or was it?
I mean, it kind of ended up being what I expected and what I was more comfortable with almost, because it feels like more theatrical, cinematic. You know what I mean? Yeah. In a sense, in the way that we use like the sound design to kind of like make it more personal in some spots. And we use the music to kind of tell a narrative in some spots and stuff like that.
Well, and that was one thing, Michael, when, in talking with Tony super early, one of the cool things was, having this idea to get all the stems of all this music, broken down to the most bass form of it, where it's just the bass or just this,
right.
Even an overhead mic or whatever, which is so hard to do in most cases, especially for an artist like Dave, who's been on so many different labels and, is unorganized in certain ways or whatever. And so, like, if we wouldn't have started that early, we would have never got it, and we would have just worked with what we had.
So, I mean, what was Dave able to get you that you could start working with of some of that more legacy catalog?
I mean, we ended up with true stems for almost everything.
Oh, amazing.
I think.
Okay.
Yeah. From the original recording.
Yeah. And do you think, I mean, I know in your edit you were kind of tearing apart stuff, but then when it came to the mix part, did you find, Tony, that's having that much flexibility is useful?
Oh, it was great.
Like remixing?
Yeah, no, it was awesome. It was fun to have all that stuff.
Yeah, sure.
So you could kind of mix it. It was all stereo stuff.
Yeah.
So it was fun to mix that stuff in a 5-1 environment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just like a personal fun kind
Yeah,
of thing.
sure.
But also you have the flexibility to like not be tied to the format of that song. You could repeat things. So like the beginning is a good example where you can match it to the picture and you can make it more drawn out if you need.
Hello again, oblivion, but it's no good to complain of fatigue in existential pain.
And then get into the section of the song you want to, so that lyrical passage can be for that story you're trying to tell
On
right there,
a
and then get out of it and stuff like that. So it was good to have the flexibility with everything. Yeah,
Totally.
For you, Brandon, I mean, this isn't your first documentary that you've directed or been a part of. So what was unique about how you approached it, how you treated it, like in your edit or post-production, or like what was maybe different, do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question, because all the films have been pretty sound-centric. I think one of them was that I was a little bit scared of, and I think that a lot of, filmmakers and people just in creative fields like are scared to kind of try the more complicated version of the thing. And I guess it's just not a great way to put it. What I'm talking about specifically is, I knew that doing these interview type things, because there's not really interviews in the film,
right?
But these interview type things would happen the best in the car.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's just like the best. Like, I got nothing to do for the next 12 hours. Let's set up a camera and just shoot the shit, which is what happened.
Totally.
Yeah.
Terrible audio
environment. You need a certified car.
And it's, but it was one of those things where I think I learned, because at the very beginning it was like, okay, is this a bad idea? Am I shooting myself in the foot by having my kind of main version of him spilling his guts in this noisy thing? And then it was like, no, there's always a way. I think it always has to be story and access first and technical later. There's always a way, right? And so I remember I went and researched. Did we talk about this early on? I went and researched and found the quietest interior cabin of a car, which was a Toyota Sienna.
Good, yeah.
And so I went and found a Toyota dealership in Murfreesboro, I don't know how to say it, outside of Nashville, Tennessee, and rented that car for our first shoot.
Was it quiet?
And it was very quiet.
Okay, all right.
And I had it, like mic'd up. I had
What'd you do?
A friend of a friend was, dude does location mixing on big Transformers action movies and shit. And so he came over and helped me kind of think out where to put mics, which evolved as it went, because it just didn't make sense or whatever. But I think that was a big thing, is just like, you can sidestep so many things that are going to give you the real moments of a thing, because you're scared of the technical challenges. And for this, that is the first thing that comes to mind. I could go on and on about them, but
For you guys, like, how did you figure out your production timeline? How many days did you mix? How did you figure out your dialogue cleanup? Like, how did you work backwards against a looming South by Southwest premiere date once you knew that that's where it was going to play?
I think we just jumped in there, man. I think we decided somehow that we had 5 days to mix, I think. And we just kind of did it.
5 days to do your mix, but you had dialogue editing before then?
Yeah, Joel cut the dialogue. I'm not sure how long. We were all kind of just like jumping in there and doing it when we could and stuff like that, you know? So it was really helpful to have Joel on. Like at first I was like,
he's going to get you a head start so you're not going to have to touch and worry about cleaning up little futzes and stuff in the dialogue.
Yeah, like little edits and stuff like that. And, you know, it would be a smooth piece and stuff like that. And then you just have to kind of clean it up from there. But even with like the cleanup stuff, like some of that stuff's okay. Like the noise is okay. As long as like Dave has a really distinct voice. So you got to like keep that. And like the noise is fine. Yeah. Like as long as you can hear what he's saying. Right. Like the noise is fine, especially, I mean, I think that's true for like a lot of features too. Mm-hmm. Like noise is fine. Noise isn't that big of a deal. As long as like you can hear what they're saying and it's a smooth noise. Right. It's not just like going in and out and stuff like that. So, yeah. And we do have, I wanted it to be like cinematic and theatrical in a way, but like it is a documentary. So you can kind of get away with the reality of things, like you're in a car, right? So it's okay if it sounds like he's in a car.
What did you find like after the first day? Like, how did you guys feel? What was like? What do you remember of like?
I remember after the first day being like, oh, I wish I had more time.
Always, yeah.
But I had seen your cut a lot at that point, and I had heard all the stuff that Jeff did, and I kind of had an idea of what it was and like what the pieces were and how it was going to fit together in a sense. Yeah. And I think I just took it in like broad strokes passes at first, like get a pass of everything working together in a way, and then going back around the horn and kind of fine tuning things and like diving in and, you know, getting a little more experimental with some of the, like the transitions and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. Brandon, how did you find it was for you in terms of how you prepped? Because you're doing it all in Premiere. How did you prep your tracks? Did you guys play temp music? Was everything pretty locked? How far do you take it?
Yeah, I think we had all the music locked. I tried to take it in terms of the effects, you know, tracks and the mix, just to a level where it's like they would know what I meant, kind of thing, you know, where it's like, this is the best I can do. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time like trying to perfect it because that's not what I'm good at. Yeah, sure. You know, like I just wanted to get, you know, the wireframe there where it's like, this is what I think, this is a place to start from. And, you know, like, and then watching, you know, these guys fill that in and, you know, it's like, Jeff started, you know, like figuring out like these crazy tape loop stuff. And, you know, it's just like everyone, once the kind of like we got into the zone, like these ideas would start popping up. And it was like, oh yeah, that's why you work with genius people that bring something to the table that wasn't in your brain, you know, and that's like the most life-giving, you know, energy-giving kind of exciting part of the thing.
So you knew that you were going to use all of Dave's music, but did you have a composer on top of that?
Yeah, so it worked out in a really interesting way, and I think it was okay. I think it is okay. I know it's okay. I love it, but who was it? Well, so it was kind of a weird amalgam, and the reason why I say it's okay is because really the musical voice is Dave, obviously, and so it becomes hard to kind of have such a strong musical voice outside of that. So what ended up happening is there's we used music and score from 2 or 3 other artists. Yeah, I mean the main ones were Sean Galloway, who's a composer that I worked with in the past, and he composed original music for it. And then Andy Othling, who is an ambient musician, brilliant, goes by Lowercase Noises. We used a bunch of existing stuff from him. Yeah, one of the biggest elements of the film is Sean Lane, who's Dave's drummer in Pedro the Lion, and he created this instrument that he calls the bike, that it's based off of, like, the frame is a bike frame, and he has welded to it all this crazy shit, and it's all going through, you know, like pedals, and he's doing bow stuff on it, and you know,
textures and other stuff like that.
Yeah, and so he did a record called The Bike that I borrowed from pretty heavily, and then he and Dave also did a live tracking throughout the entire film where they just watched the film on mute, or they watched the film without any music and just played
and
real time.
Did you end up using that?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah.
We dipped in and out of it. And the cool thing about that was Dave was kind of, directing Sean, and when he said, "This is what it sounds like inside my head."
Oh, wow.
And it was like, oh, wow, okay.
What did you find maybe day 3, day 4, when you have, you know, time? Like, how do you prioritize the focus? How do you conceive of, like, this is the first priority? How do you break up, you know, a 5-day mix?
Oh man, that's a good question.
Do you start from the top and just do everything, like bulldoze through?
Yeah, just because you don't have time really on your side, so you do have to, like, for me at least, I was like, okay, I got to get through a pass.
Yeah,
for sure.
Let's
just so I can get something on tape and make sure, like, broad strokes wise, like all the emotional content that we had talked about for months is there. Right. The narrative between the songs, Dave's story, that stuff's there.
Yeah,
you can hear what they're saying. Like big picture, like, items were there. And, like, once we got to the tail pop the first time, I was like, okay, we have something.
Right.
We have something recorded and printed to tape. So like, we're cool and it works. Like on like a macro level. Like, it works. And
watchable.
And it's kind of like, at what point, like, was I able to get done with that? Which I don't even remember. But like, as soon as I could get done with that and address those big picture things, it's like, all right, let's go back and kind of fine tune things and really dig in. And as you're doing that, you can always make sure, you're always, like, checking yourself to make sure that the big emotional pieces are intact and they work, and they're flowing in and out of each other, and it's all working, like, on a big level.
So after you've done a 10-hour, 8-hour, whatever, 12-hour, 15-hour day of doing that, how do you stop and then watch the film from top to bottom and then react to that? Or do you not do that? How did you guys get, like, a bigger picture view to understand, like, is this all in context?
I think it was just going back through again. Like, so I think I did a first pass on my own.
Okay.
And I didn't really ask a lot of questions probably. I was probably just, like,
making a lot of choices.
Yeah, like executive decisions, and, like, just, like, taking all the ingredients and, like, making what I wanted out of it.
Right.
And based off of conversations and the pieces that Jeff and Joel provided and stuff like that. And then for the second
cool
pass,
to watch.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
It was, like, such this focused thing.
Well, you've been living with it now for, like, 5,000 days, and now you get off to a guy who's seen it for the first time, right? Yeah. Which is what you want.
And but it's like there's gas in the car and he knows where he's going.
Brandon's
it's just hell yeah. Like, it was so relieving for you to just start going, and because it's like, I don't even know what to say. Like, my role is so confused in this all of a sudden, and then Tony just, like, took the baton and started fucking sprinting. And it was like, hell yeah.
And I'm sure I asked a couple questions on that first pass.
No,
like,
you didn't ask one question.
You stared at the back of your head for about 2 days.
No. Like, what is this guy doing?
But I think that's that's an incredible asset, I think, to a filmmaker, because they want fresh eyes and, like, what's the pulse of this film?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially with not a lot of time. Like, it's not like I pre-dubbed it, where I had the time to, like, wrap my head around things and kind of make it something before you jump in. Like, I had to kind of, like, wrangle the pieces and, like, get it into some kind of shape, whatever that means. And then, like, I think whatever day, I went around for the second pass, you, like, came up and sat next to me a lot, and, like, we went through it together. And I was like, okay, what do you think about this? Like, I made it like this, but is this hitting, like, is this resonating with you? Is this how you want it to be? And, like, some of it sometimes is yes, and sometimes it was like, we could do this differently. So like, that second pass is where we, like, took more time, and it became more of a collaborative kind of thing of, like, really digging in and, like, making sure, like, the pieces were fitting together right.
One thing that it made me think of that last question is just Like, it was so important for us to have been communicating so clearly and so much. And Tony gave so much of that just, out of his collaborative nature. But there's no way he could have just went with it that first pass, like if we hadn't been communicating like this, and this wasn't our conversation.
Yeah, sure.
The sound was our collaborative conversation.
Hard drive shows it to Tony. He's like, all right, let's open the Pro Tools sessions. All right, what's
Right.
today?
What do we
What
work
are we
on?
working on today?
Yeah.
That wasn't the case, obviously.
Right. Yeah, it's like he knew exactly
Yeah.
what he wanted to do. We had lived
Right.
in this world together for a while.
I had watched it like several times, and we'd had a lot of like conference calls about various things. So I already feel like I knew what you were talking about. Like I was on the same, we were on the same page in a sense.
Totally.
It was just like getting all the pieces and being able to kind of put it together.
That's what I think I learned from this film for you, Brandon, is that there's a huge advantage of bringing in sound early on, even if they're not actually touching a fader or a mouse. Like the conversation is still worthwhile. Yeah. So for you guys, now that the film has played out or is playing out, what in your mind are some of the takeaways when you do see it with an audience? Like, how does that change your perception of the film and the work that you guys did?
You haven't seen it yet, have you?
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were kind of talking about this before. Like, I don't know, man. It's always hard to watch it. Like after, like, there's like definitely a period of time. Like, I don't know. Like, cause I always feel like there's more I could have done.
Of course. Always.
So like part of me wants to see it because I want to like bring some friends and like check it out and stuff like that. But like part of me feels like I'm just gonna sit there the whole time. Like I could have,
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. What about for you, Brennan? Now that how many times has it screened since South by?
Probably 30 times or so,
Okay.
25, 30 times. And we'll probably do 30 or 40 more before it becomes widely available. I love it. I feel like we did it. Like I feel like it's such a visceral experience, like, because I remember being, which is so rare for me, I remember being scared that it was too much and too loud sometimes, like that we were pushing it too hard, and coming off of my last film, In Pursuit of Silence, to this,
Yeah, sure.
Like it definitely,
The threshold is different.
yeah, and and In Pursuit of Silence, the dynamics were so much different. Where it's like almost no sound to Mumbai,
Right,
like
of course, yeah,
crazy loud. And I watched the audience not react well to that, the Mumbai stuff, which was the point, but it was also like just too much sometimes. And the quiet was too quiet sometimes, and it was too extreme to keep a majority of the audience in. And so I was a little trigger shy this time when it came to that, even though I knew that this was going to be the power of the thing. And we did it, like we pushed it. Do you feel like we kept it like the faders up as loud as you would want to?
I mean, sometimes. not always, I hope. I mean,
Not always, yeah.
I hope it's like dynamic in a sense where
No. That like you would have chosen personally. Like, was it quite a bit quieter than you would have, like if you had carte blanche?
I maybe would have gone a little further sometimes, but like, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's kind of hard to.
It's interesting too because a lot of the settings are live shows, so like you're trying to go between a really well sounding thing and a live show atmosphere. Did you find that you were adding more room, more verb to those live tracks?
I did sometimes because some of those things were like just mono mics, and like I wanted it to be more lively, than that and stuff. And those are, I think, the times when we push it the most. Okay. Which is what like I wanted it to be. So like, you're talking and like sometimes it gets dreamy and stuff like that, and then you go back to talking and then it's like a live show. So you have like the license to go over the top and be like loud and like have low end and stuff like that. Yeah. Because you want that energy of like being at a show, and then you kind of come back down and then we're talking. And
what would you, I guess, Tony, for you, what would your tip be to other filmmakers? What would you say to them? If you're thinking about serious sound for a documentary, what things can they do to help?
I think the most important thing we did, and we already talked about this, is hooking up really early. Okay. And like having these conversations really early, because we were able to like really like get some emotional like moments in there, You know what I mean? And a lot of that came from, I feel like, the way you cut it and you kind of assembled it and put it together. And we had talked about that early on. You're like, I want to do these things. Like, I want to tell this story and I want to use his lyrics to do it. And I was like, all right, man, good luck, dude. And like but you did it. You totally nailed it. You know what I mean? But I don't know. I mean, it was just helpful to like have those conversations really early on.
Yeah. And I think that, it's testament because there is, I think, even just thinking about the dynamics or, I guess looking at the waveform of the film, like Tony told a story, and, the whole team, Jeff, and, it's like, it's all there. If you just look at it and you watch the builds and the breaks and everything that Joel did and blah, 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 where it's like, it's not just this, legible thing. It's like, there's a movie in the way that this is mixed and how one scene hands off to another sonically more than visually or editing wise even.
Yeah, a lot of audio transitions that are meaningful and kind of carry the story and connect Dave's story with what's going on. Yeah, I think that's a great point. Yeah, I think you guys did that really well, which intentional or not, it ends up being the case. Brandon, for you, what's your takeaway of working with sound early? Because we can understand that early collaboration is important. What was different this time around for you because of how this worked out?
I mean, I think the biggest thing, my takeaway is just like create a situation in which you get the most time possible in the room with someone like Tony. Yeah. Where it's like, that stuff can so easily be pushed to the back. Even, it's like we're talking about collaborating early and all this stuff, but even just like prioritizing the mix, and earmarking a lot of energy and money towards that, like, can change an entire film. Like I remember I was in film school and the mixers that did Dances of the Wolves told this story about how like that movie was a total disaster. Or no, it was the producer, how the movie was a disaster, like garbage can. Yeah. And then the sound team came in and spent almost as long as the production and it, won all these Oscars. And it's just like, I believe that makes total sense to me.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I would say prioritize this in post more than anything from my point of view.
That's awesome.
It was also really helpful. Like you had a lot of like trust in me, in Jeff and Joel and stuff like that, where it was like, we had talked about a lot about what you wanted it to be, but a lot about what we wanted it to be. And like you were able to like let us make something, and you know what I mean? It wasn't just about like what you wanted it to be, and we were just there to like serve that. It was a really collaborative kind of thing where like you had a lot of trust in the team and like our tastes and our sensibilities and like what we had to bring to the table.
Yeah.
So it was cool to have you like give us so much freedom to make, put ourselves into it.
Right.
And then like kind of collaborate with you to make it what you wanted it to be. You know what I mean?
Totally. And it's like the film and a lot of documentarians, like it's just such an isolating experience creatively. And then to get around people in post, that bring such incredible things to the table.
The storytelling possibilities, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, all these artists, is kind of just like this, such an exciting thing to me. Like I have goosebumps right now thinking about it, actually. Like once we all started, and like hearing these things where it's like, well, what if we do this? And, it's like, I'd never thought of that.
Yeah,
and this thing has only just lived inside my head. So it was like, I was just like pushing it as much as possible because it's just like there's so much beauty coming out of these ideas and this interchange that it's just like the film's getting better every second we talk,
That's awesome. So the film is coming out. It's going to be coming out. You can go to bazanfilm.com, check it out and find out more. I think there's like a great opportunity to see a music documentary in a theater, which is unique and different. So thank you guys so much for sharing a little bit of the insight. I feel like documentaries are not not always meant to be this like sonic experience, but I've heard so many wonderful documentaries that just stand out, and I think this is obviously one of them that's told really well. So congrats, you guys.
Awesome.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Mitch.